So apparently, OpenAI is coming for Microsoft Office and Google Workspace. And this even might have something to do with the product that it is working on with Jony Ive. I wasn't planning on doing a video today, but I just have some speculation here I'm really excited about, and I wanted to talk about this. It seems like really interesting news if you're into, tech and products and devices. And first, to set up the news, I wanted to go over 3 news beats that are, in my mind, sort of joined together and are starting to give us a better picture of the physical consumer tech device that OpenAI is working on with Jony Ive. So I'm going to go over to the screen here. And first on 9 to 5 Mac, and this was reported on a wide variety of websites. There's reporting on a lawsuit where a company called IO, as in IYO, that makes an in-ear or plans to make an in-ear AI-powered device, is suing OpenAI, saying that OpenAI's device is going to be too similar. Now, OpenAI has filed to dismiss that, saying, what are you talking about? We don't even have a device concept that we put out yet, so how can you say it's too similar? And as part of that, they have declared that whatever they're working on is not an in-ear device, and it is not a wearable. Now, there is a lot of wiggle room there. You could say, like, does this mean it could be headphones? Or this could be, what does it mean to be a wearable? What is that, like, legally a definition of a wearable? Are there ways around that? Maybe. But I'm going to take them at their word here and imagine that, broadly speaking, whatever they're working on is not in those product categories. All right. Now, in Business Insider, another broadly reported thing, Sam Altman, talking to Jack Altman, apparently his brother, on a podcast called Uncapped, said that it should be a device that can get done whatever you want to get done. And he compared it to computers and smartphones, but said it will go beyond the constraints of those devices. And he said, they don't have a word for it yet. My AI companion is the best I can do right now. So this does... Again, to me, this is starting to sound like something that is comparable to a computer or a smartphone, but definitely not those things. So you can imagine it is something that has some similar form factor and is probably carried with you or might be present on your desk, not a wearable, not an in-ear device, but something that's going to be around you. All right. And then, and this news might seem unrelated at first, but I think it is actually related. There is the news that OpenAI is working on basically a competitor to Microsoft Office and Google Workspace, and that they want to go sort of head-to-head with those, but doing it within a ChatGPT ecosystem where the ChatGPT companion is always there and ready to help you out whenever you have a request. So when I think about these 3 news pieces together, I start to imagine something. And again, this is a speculation, but I think we, come along with me. Maybe you'll have different thoughts on this, but I think something does start to come together as far as what it's not going to be and what it could be. So what could it be? I think it's going to be something that, like I said, with a smartphone or a computer form factor, that's something that you can take with you, or it can be on your desk. Something you can have on your person, but definitely not a wearable, not an in-ear device, not something that you are using as like a fashion accessory or putting in your ears, around your neck, clipping to your pocket protector, anything like that. A more traditional sort of consumer electronics device. And I'm imagining that this electronic consumer tech device is going to, I think they've said in the past they don't really want to do a screen. Maybe it won't have one, but it'll probably be sitting on a desk and it will have cameras and it will have microphones. And these cameras and microphones will have a 360-degree view. They'll be able to pick up what the user is doing, perhaps not just like what they're saying, but maybe even like their sort of emotional state based on their facial expressions or what their gestures are. Are they even present right now with the device or not? Are they paying attention to what they're doing right now? Are they engaged in a conversation with someone else? So on and so forth. And so I'm imagining that it's going to sit on the desk, probably have cameras that are looking all around, right? And I'm also imagining that this device then is going to connect with that OpenAI workspace, and that the two are going to work together in a same, basically, context window. So you can imagine that in the OpenAI workspace, if you're working on a document and an email comes in, you could click on it if you choose to do so. But you might also say, hey, AI companion, that looks like it's a meeting invite I was expecting. Can you just make sure it's on my calendar? Thanks. And it'll do that for you. Or you can imagine that maybe it will notice that you haven't been at your desk for a while. And if you set it up to do so, that it would say like, hey, my human is not available right now, not at their desk. They're not going to reply for a bit. Or maybe you can set up a do not disturb, or it might even notice that it's like you're really focused on something and be like, hey, my human's really focusing on something right now. I'm not letting any notifications through. We'll get back to you later on when we have some free time. And that is kind of what I am expecting the device to be at this point. So again, to be super clear, we were talking about something like maybe phone-sized, probably phone-sized, probably going to sit on the desk, but I can't imagine it like sitting flat on a desk. Cameras, microphones, looking all around, and that this OpenAI workspace and other OpenAI software is going to be an integral part of it. That's why it might not have a screen. It might be designed so that you actually, are doing all of your like typing and visual interaction with a traditional computer or smartphone, which frankly, I think would be very smart, because I don't think that OpenAI is going to make a better smartphone than Apple, or a better laptop than Apple or Microsoft, so on and so forth. And actually, I wanted to provide an example of something that already exists that is like vaguely similar to this, but kind of in a more niche product category. This is something I've seen quite a few times. So this is something called the Lenovo ThinkSmart Hub 500. And what this basically is a Microsoft Teams connected device for companies. They put in meeting rooms. And the idea is that you can go into it and you can just sort of start a meeting by pressing a button on the device. If you work for a big company, you may have seen something like this in your own offices already. I have seen some examples where, due to the connection to Microsoft Teams and whatnot, more recently you can even do things like transcription with these sort of devices, AI transcription, meeting notes and whatnot. And so these are basically, kind of very lightweight companion devices that are sort of meant to manage meetings automatically in the corporate environment. Now, the thing is that they are quite limited compared to what OpenAI might envision, and they tend to be just for like a meeting room. But Microsoft has talked about this multiple occasions over the last 10 years, this idea of ambient computing and how that might sometimes come into work in meetings, and the idea that you could maybe have some kind of automated or AI assistant that is going to be able to jump into your meetings and basically coordinate the meetings, transcribe the meetings, and do a variety of things automatically. Well, I think OpenAI is kind of imagining the same thing, but for everybody, for an individual person. And so companies could have this as part of their, company-wide deployment, part of their IT deployment, but also people could also, buy one and use it for themselves. And this is, I think, like a somewhat viable idea. Importantly, it is a new category that doesn't compete strongly with any major category out there right now, because while there are devices like this Hub 500, they're not particularly popular. I would argue that in general, they don't work very well and don't really fulfill the idea of kind of an ambient meeting assistant or companion that I have heard floated at various points over the last 10 years. Another thing that's worth keeping in mind about this is the money, okay? Like, something you have to ask about OpenAI with their incredibly lavish, valuations, and them working on a hardware product, is what are they going to work on that can possibly generate enough money to like be justified? Like, is that an iPhone? Probably not. No one seems to get margins better than Apple. And Apple's, obviously a very rich company. They get great margins, but everyone else can't quite get there. And if OpenAI can't get to super high margins and super high volumes like that very quickly with a consumer, like smartphone-like product that is going directly towards that sort of broad user base, then they don't really have a chance of making the money they need to justify all these investments, right? However, you can imagine that if they made a device like I'm describing, where it is a work companion and it can handle a variety of tasks for you automatically as part of a broader workspace offering, no doubt subscription based, just like ChatGPT right now is $20 to $200 based on the subscription that you sign up for. If they can pitch a product like that and make it work, they could potentially get people to pay some pretty outrageous prices for that if it did everything that they say it's going to do. Now, of course, that's the big question. If you had a companion like this, how reliable would it be? I suspect it could be made reasonably reliable enough that people would want to use it. But obviously, if you're going to have this integrated device with an OpenAI workspace, and you're going to be relying on it to do all sorts of different tasks for you throughout the day, from scheduling meetings to a little light shopping to summarizing some notes, you're going to have to super trust it. And, I think the verdict is still out as to whether or not people are able to trust their AI companions that much. I also think that even with what I'm describing, a device where, it could be like $1,000 or $2,000 and you're paying $100 or $200 a month, I really do think those are not impractical or like impossible things that might come out once this device actually exists for pricing. It's still like, can you get enough volume there? I don't know. But I do think it's an interesting concept, right? Because this is what I'm describing is an ambient device. It's not a wearable, it's not in ear, not a computer, not a smartphone. It really is something that's different from anything else that we have in our lives today, except sort of kind of some of these smart meeting hubs and companions that exist in some corporate boardrooms, but those don't really work very well. And to the extent that they have AI features at all, it tends to be very limited. So that's my speculation. That's what I think OpenAI is building. I think it's a very work-focused product. I think it's going to be something that is going to be able to be pitched by OpenAI as a work accelerator and a productivity accelerator in order to justify a very high price and a high subscription price. We'll see whether or not that comes true. So, you can put a pin on this if you want to come back in a year and tell me that I was either incredibly smart and clever because I got it right, or incredibly stupid and ignorant because I got it wrong. Feel free to do so. It should be a fun ride either way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.